Hi, everybody, it's Weird Wink Wilkinson laughing and scratching at you. How's everybody doing today? I got a little bit of a stiff neck. Let me just fix this up. Oh, that feels a lot better. Well, I got a great show for you today with some wonderful weird stuff. I feel so very weird.
There are some things in this world that go way beyond human understanding. Things that cannot be explained, things that most people don't want to know about. That is where we come in.
No human being would stack books like this.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. I'm all out of bubblegum.
Oh, it looks like you're the one who needs to be taught a lesson, pal. Class is paying 101. The instructor's Casey Jones.
Look, I don't want to fight you.
Well, tough rocks, pal.
Do you want some coffee, Mr. Tully?
Do I?
Yes, have some.
Yes, have some.
It's a cup of coffee in the big time, yeah. Cup of coffee in the big time.
Hey, what do you say we both be independent together, huh?
I guess one person can make a difference. Enough said.
We have the tools, we have the talent.
It's Miller time.
Luminous being so we, not this fruit batcher.
Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Hey, these aren't my rules. Come to think of it, I don't have any rules.
Well, that's great. Either I have a monster in my kitchen or I'm completely crazy.
I don't think you're crazy.
You know something? Maybe I am insane. Maybe I am insane.
Pizza dude's got 30 seconds.
Rise to the top, oh yeah.
That's the nicest thing a dog can say about anybody.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. Enough, I get the point. You know what you need? You need a Brazilian plastic surgeon.
I've got one that can see.
Sometimes happens, someone has to deal with it, and who are you gonna call?
It's showtime.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Comic Book Radio. This is episode 290. I'm your host, Peter Cimetti, and tonight my guest is Charlie McFARLAND. We're going to be talking about his comic Pistol Shrimp, among other things. But before I bring him on, before I get started, the newsprint campaign, newsprintcomics.com, that we really are chugging along on this. Thank you guys for your support, your contributions, spreading the word, all that good stuff. We are just $250 away right now from the $15,000 goal. There's 14 days left to get there. I don't want to sound overconfident, but I think we could do it. I think we could do it before the 14 days are up. So we have just 250 left. 250 left. We had a generous backer today, although I don't know how generous they are. Maybe they just want a big print run. It's not really a donation per se. But I really appreciate the contributions regardless, no matter what, of course, because you guys are helping me to get this off the ground. Again, we have 111 backers on board, and we got 14 days left to reach the goal, just 250 away. If you don't know what this campaign is, it's basically for me to build, or continue to build, I should say, an indie in-house print shop for comics to print comics on newsprint. The campaign title is Print Your Comic on Newsprint. Didn't have enough room for all of that garbled mess of a one-sentence pitch. But nonetheless, printing this stuff in-house, which I am currently doing right now. I've been showing test samples. You can see a bunch of test samples all over the campaign. You can see pricing and all that kind of stuff too. This is a reality. This isn't just something that might happen. This isn't something that could go right. We'll see. It's going right. It's getting made. Things are happening right now. I've got a bunch of Blood Realm 15 and 16 already assembled. Right now, I've got them pressing just to kind of add like that finishing touch. But I'll have pictures and whatnot to show you guys soon of those. Those are going to be the first books printed with the in-house newsprint. But this is a very exciting campaign because we're opening it up to all kinds of other indie creators as well. And you can purchase a print voucher on here. If you're not someone who wants to get a print run, you can also get a sketch card, which I have 12 of left. And then you can get a t-shirt, a bumper sticker, or you could get a sampler, a comic of both the standard size and a mini size. And we got mini bags and boards. I'm making custom bags and boards for the mini size comic. And they actually came out pretty good. And, you can also get your own comic, a standard and a mini as well. So there's all kinds of different things on here for all kinds of different folks that are looking to support. But I really appreciate the 111 backers who have contributed and the countless others who have helped spread the word. So thank you guys so much. All right. So that's enough of this from me tonight, because the rest of the focus is going to be on you guys in the chat and Charlie, who is the guest of honor. Now, before I bring him on, I know Charlie is sitting there real patient. I'm going to say hello to everybody in the chat. We got Ara here. What's up, Ara? Bretsky the Great is here. We got Jeff Kimbler. We got Kellraiser. How's it going? Cigar Gangster's here, too. What's up, Cigar Gangster? Brian Suddenly Old is here, too. How's it going? We got World of War Comics in the chat. Also, Bill Mouse is here. It says, long live newsprint. And for those that don't know, I mean, maybe this is your first time ever tuning in or even hearing me say anything, but at Alterna, which is the comic company I'm the publisher of and the founder of, we've been using newsprint in our comics since 2017. So we've been doing this for a while now, and we're probably the only publisher that consistently does so. So to bring this in-house is just great. I can't express how awesome it is. Brian says, I absolutely dig what you are doing. This is awesome. Man, you're going to get blown away by the stuff I have to show with the Blood Realm books. They're coming out fantastic. Sampler books already done for the backers on the campaign. So that stuff is already good to go. But yeah, I'm actually fulfilling some of those perks too with the sampler, because some people have ordered things from the Alterna site or other campaigns, and I'm shipping out some of the sampler books as well, along with any of those orders that they have pending. But yeah, it's great stuff. Great stuff. And thank you guys again for your support. All right. So now, without further ado, of which there has been much of, courtesy of yours truly, let me bring on the guest of honor tonight. Give him a big round of applause at home, or whatever it is you guys do when I bring someone on. But at least give him your full attention. We've got Mr. Charlie McFarland. What's up, Charlie?
Hey, how's it going?
Going good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I don't want to jinx it by giving a premature congratulations on the campaign, but I'd say it's a pretty safe bet at this point.
I appreciate that. It'd be the strangest. It'd be the equivalent of going for a slam dunk and just hitting the rim.
Just whiffing. But I do think that's very cool what you're doing, going for the in-house printer. I think that's going to be very cool. Very good for the community as a whole.
Yeah, I can't wait to start printing up other people's books too. I know some people are really excited about this, and they're going to be sending me some stuff to print up for them. That's going to be real fun. It's going to be great to see a lot of people getting more and more of their stuff printed on newsprint too.
I didn't realize at Alterna you'd only been using it since 2017. I figured that was right out of the gate, was the newsprint, because that always seemed like your big selling point.
Yeah, no, we had used a bunch of different like uncoated stocks or matte coated stocks or whatever along the way, but never anything on newsprint
Yeah.
until 2017.
Well, that was probably the best decision you made because that kind of became, in my mind at least, the identity of your brand. I
Yeah.
mean, when I think Alterna, I think newsprint.
And I'd always wanted to get books printed on newsprint. I mean, that's what comics were
Yeah.
for so long. Those are the ones I grew up reading were all on newsprint, and I really fell out of love with comics for a short period of time because of it. When it switched over to kind of like the glossier paper,
Yeah.
I felt like it kind of was like a little bit of a death of comics in some way because so many things shifted. Did you ever notice that? Like so many things with like the way they told stories, the art style, the different
I
kinds of elements in which they could tell the story.
my
It
my
shifted with that
comic
paper.
reading started a little bit later, so I think by the time I jumped in, they'd already gone over to. I mean, I've got some volumes of Why the Last Man that still kind of have that newsprint feel to them. I don't know, but those are the only books I've ever actually owned that had that already.
Do you have a preference on paper stock?
The only ones I
Both as
don't
a
like
both as a reader and as a creator.
as a reader, the only time it's not so much a preference on what I like, more so as a preference on what I don't like. Like I've never been a fan of when comics have that really like the cover where it's like a card stock almost, and you see that
Okay.
a lot in a lot of like indie Kickstarter comics. They get them printed and it's like this real hard shell cover almost, and then the pages
Mhm.
don't feel anything like it. And I don't know, I've never been a fan of that. It makes the pages kind of bow out a little bit too.
Yep.
And yeah, I can't stand that. When I print mine, that's the one thing I am adamant not to do is please don't give me that super hard shell cover kind of feel.
Yeah, yeah, I like that obviously for like the graphic novels,
Yeah,
but yeah, for
if I'm
the
doing like a
single
trade
issue.
paperback, sure. But
Yeah.
I've got a couple back there that I've backed some Kickstarters from people, and it's just like it looks good on paper, I guess. Like when you think about it, it's like, oh yeah, it's gonna be a nicer cover, a thicker cover, but I just hate the feel of it.
Yeah. What do you feel about newsprint? You have an
I like
opinion about that? Yeah?
well, so like I said, the only ones I bought before, I do have several alternate comics I bought from you, so that's about the only ones I own floppy issues of that are in newsprint. But before that, those volumes of Why the Last Man I had were about the only thing I saw with that newsprint paper, and I liked it I mean, I didn't put a lot of thought into it so much, but
Yeah.
I mean, I like how I don't know. I just kind of like it. It's
It
got
it's
the
it's
ink kind of
nice.
pops out in a different way. Like I still
Yeah.
like like the glossy pages of some books, but
You don't have to fight
there's
the light. I like that part of it. You
yeah.
don't have to fight
Oh
the
yeah,
light and
that's a good
search,
point.
to avoid it the whole time and yeah, it
No
adds like a
fingerprints or anything on the pages whenever you.
well, it depends.
I guess if they're
Yeah, it
smearing the
depends.
ink, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's the newsprint. That's what I grew up with when I was reading comics, and I always wanted my comics to be on that kind of paper stock. But you've got a comic called Pistol Shrimp, and
Yes,
before we
yes.
dive into that a little bit, for those that don't know, you've had an Alterna published story.
I had three actually. I was in three issues of it. Came out on a Wednesday with
There you go.
Alterna favorite artist Alexander Jovic,
Oh
who's
yeah, he's
yeah, I've done a
great.
few issues of King Cryptid.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Alex is fantastic.
he's a great artist, and he's got basically the kind of writing I like to do, very comedic, very lighthearted. He was always like my first go-to person because that's his style. Speaking of newsprint, like his look like they jumped right off the page of a newspaper comic. Like I love that about his art.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah,
Was that the first time you ever worked with Alex? Was on those short stories?
we worked together. So God, this would have going back to like 2012. And I reached out. Just it was 2012. I'd been reading comics, and I was what 18, 19. I'm relatively young in the comics game, but back in 2012, I finally was like, I'm going to try to write my own comics. So I just reached out and I did what is a big no-no, and I would say no one ever do this, but going into a message board and saying, hey, anybody want to work for free? Don't ever ever expect any artist, and they shouldn't. And I was 100% in the wrong on that one. But Alex reached out to me and was like, "Hey, if you just want to do like a 4 or 5 page comic, like something short," he's like, "it'll help me build my portfolio." He's like, because I said my idea just in this forum where anybody could come around and take it if they wanted to, but he was like, "It sounds like fun. We can give it a shot." So we wrote this 5 page comic pitch that the idea was, oh, we'll pitch to Image Comics, even though I've never made a comic in my life and I'm 18 years old. But in my head, I'm like, oh, we'll have our own series, that it'll be that easy. And so we made this little 5 page comic called Knoxville. It was about this redneck in this post-apocalyptic world who swung a banjo around. And actually, I hate to mess up my camera, but he sent me years later the original pages for it.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah. So it was very cool. And because of that, us working together on that years after the fact, because that was 2012. So shoot, I guess that alternate story must have been in like 2018 or something.
Yeah, that
But
had to be like 2018, 2019.
yeah, he just randomly reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, if you want to work on another story or something," he said, because he at that point was doing Mr. Crypt. So he already kind of had it in, and he was like, "If you want, you can pitch to these guys. They've got an anthology, and we can try and see if we can get into that." And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And then that was the first thing I was ever published in as a comic book writer. And shortly after that, me and him did a series that got published through Action Lab Comics. And so, yeah, it was wild.
So I think what you're saying is the best thing you could do is go into a message board and say anybody want to work for free.
Well, you also will get a ton of angry responses when you do it. But if you can sort through all of those,
bear the
might
slings
work
and
out.
arrows, but it obviously worked out. There's a bunch
It
of
did.
happy
To
endings to
Alex's
that.
credit, he had every right in the world to send me the most hateful email back in response to that. But to his credit, he said, "No, man, let's do it. Let's give it a shot."
Well, if that's the thing about this industry, no one should ever work for exposure.
Yeah, and
because that's stupid.
Yeah, and I hated that. Looking back, I'm like, man, I was a kid, but like, I get it. Like, you shouldn't expect anybody to want to work on your project for free. If they do, that's great. But
the thing is, people should work for experience. So oftentimes people who find themselves in the work for exposure category, where they're bemoaning the fact that no one wants to pay them a huge page rate, they usually are untested and kind of have no idea what they're doing. And they don't even know if they could make a comic, let alone a short story or a page. But they think they should get a $200 page rate or something.
You should definitely have a good sense of judgment on when to work for free and when not to. Like, I mean, if Brian K. Vaughan, one of my favorite writers in comics, just came up to me and was like, "Hey, I want to write something with you, but I'm not going to pay you," I would at least be like, "This guy has proven himself enough. This would be a good experience for me." Yeah. But if my neighbor 2 houses down, "Hey, I got an idea for a comic. Will you write it for me for free?" I'm probably not going to say yes on that one.
Well, yeah, again, it's that kind of thing of like you have to evaluate the job and who's doing the hiring or the working with you. But that's the thing, is that a lot of people, they find that they're not willing to put in a little bit of that. Okay, this guy wants to obviously not pay anybody. Just ask if the project sounds interesting. What's this project? And are you willing to work with me on this kind of page rate? Because some people will be like, yeah, maybe I could do like $20, $30, $40, $50 a page for someone who's relatively untested as well. And then they can get a portfolio piece, get an idea of what it is to even make a comic. Because otherwise you're going to work for free, but it's going to be for yourself.
And that is a good point.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it from the writer's side, because I don't do art. So it's to me, I'm just thinking, if somebody reaches out to me and it's like, "Hey, you want to write a story and it'll get published?" I'm still low enough on the totem pole that I'm like, hell yeah, I want to do that. Like, I haven't gotten to that point where I'm comfortable asking for certain page fees or anything. But when it comes to artists, I know they're very adamant about, hey, some of them say don't work for free. which I 100% get, but at the same time, I agree with the idea of use your judgment. If you think you can further your career, or this is a good opportunity for you in some way, and yeah, there might not be a ton of money in it, use your judgment if
Yeah.
it's something you want to do.
Yeah. And that's the thing with Alex, is that Alex has such a great attitude and a great work ethic
Oh, for sure.
that is going to take him so far with all of that, and that's what really is a big deal, is that attitude. If you have an attitude where you're not really wanting to work with others, or not necessarily maybe compromise on certain things, even though you do have to compromise here or there, but if you close yourself off from working with other people, and you're always in a position where you're someone who's going to be like work for a hire or a collaborator, because most of comics is probably filled with people who are the bits and pieces of a creative team as opposed to the person who does everything. So it's good to at least get the experience and get things going on that front, because you never know what's going to lead to something. Like, imagine, even if in an industry outside of comics, let's say even in movies or television or whatever, if you were like, oh no, this part is too small for me,
Yeah,
they just want to pay me $100 a day, for this, this is beneath me. I've been in community theater. It's like,
yeah,
well,
you
I
can't
guess,
just waltz in expecting to get paid the same as
it's like, well, forever you shall
A-listers.
stay in community theater. You gotta, but you never know who you're going to network with. And you can see there's a lot of people's careers, both comics, whatever it is, where you get people who are like, oh, wow, they started with, and then they must have talked to and known this person and said, and then they worked their way up in 5-10 years. It's like, wow, look how far they've come.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing, is if you're asking for money, you also got to expect people to be far more critical of what you're offering, because suddenly when you're,
Great point.
yeah, because that was one thing, is me and Alex working together, in those early days, he would send me art and I was just grateful to have it. I was like, hey, I'm not going to criticize too much here. But once we started working together and it was, there was money to be made, then hey, that script you wrote, maybe we should change this page. And I would at the same time, yeah, and I think maybe this character should be drawn this way. It's like, once you get that, you got to expect, people are going to expect more from your work too. So I guess it is kind of a double-edged sword.
Absolutely. Hellraiser, called paying your dues.
Yeah, I agree.
100%. So,
and
what were you going to say? I'm sorry.
I was going to say, and I feel like I'm just now getting to that point where I've had people reach out to me and offered me paid gigs, whereas, I mean, hey, I was making comics no pay at all, and I was just happy to do it. So it is like, hey, the world of Twitter, they hate everything, and it's they all don't do anything for free. You deserve more than that. But it's like, hey, if I hadn't done some of these jobs for free, where would I be? I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. I find that every person on earth who enjoys telling someone how to live their life exists on Twitter.
Yeah, for sure.
And then there's the rest of us too that are there, but
Yeah, I've always said, I'm like, man, if I wasn't doing comics, I probably would have gotten off of there a while ago, because people just want to be mad.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good place to vent, I suppose. Now, for you, as far as comics go, your whole career, you kind of mentioned a bit earlier about when you got started, about what age you were at, but how long exactly have you been making comics for?
Making them on like a quality level, it would have been since I'm 31 now, so since I was about 18 or 19. But I mean, I was drawing my own comics as a kid, so it's something I've always, ever since I opened. I mean, for me, it was Captain Underpants. I opened one of those books, and you have those little hand-drawn looking comics they did. And so to me, I looked at the pages of those books, and I was like, oh wow, you can just draw your own comic. You don't need. And then, like, I never grew up, other than Spider-Man, like, I wasn't a big superhero comics guy. So when I got into comics for real, I was reading like Preacher and Why the Last Man and Chew and like all these Image creator-owned books. So to me, that's, other than Ultimate Spider-Man, that's about all I had read as far as most superhero comics went. But
so why comics? You could tell a story in 100 different ways, but why comic books?
I like when I like this idea of, it's almost like making a movie or something, but you have, as a writer, it's you're visually telling this story, which all relies on a decent artist, but this idea of it's like making a movie. I've always loved movies, but I don't have that kind of skill set or desire to go and really, I mean, like actually film and work with actors. This is a much more smaller collaboration, so you can get your idea out in the way you want it to be, and it just seemed, I don't know, like something I've always wanted to do, and something that I was already doing even before I ever thought about it as like a career option. So
Why do you continue to make comics?
I think I just love it so much. I Something about putting it out there, and to me, I mean, a comic book is the only medium where something like a shrimp in a western shooting guns could kind of exist. I mean, I could make that as a book, but it just screams comic book to me. It's the ideas can be so much bigger in a comic book than they can in any other medium, and they can be more ridiculous. And in the comic book world, people just accept it. It's like, hey, if you want to write that story about the king of all the cryptids who are going out and he's battling these other monsters. I mean, where else can you do that, right?
That's true. Yeah, that's true. At least where else can you do it and it doesn't cost you a
Yeah,
ton of
yeah.
money?
In a way that's accessible to the average person, you know.
Yeah,
It could also work as like a fun animated series, but I mean, that's gonna be that's the next step, maybe.
yeah. I think I mean I would love to see that, but it's kind of weird how we don't see more animated series for comic stuff anymore. You know, there was the
Yeah,
heyday of it seems like it was the early 90s to like the mid 2000s.
I've never been like a diehard anime guy, but that's always one thing I've respected about like Japanese anime is like they've accepted that you can do animation for adults and make these cool action scene and all this stuff. And it's like, why hasn't I mean, we're starting to kind of get like, I mean, I guess Invincible was a step in the right direction, but like we
Mhm.
just don't see a lot of, yeah, you're right. We don't really see a lot of that in America.
Yeah, and we used to. We
Yeah.
used to, but I don't know. It's a lot of the live action stuff now, but then there's a lot of choosing the
And
live action over the animated, especially in the Disney camp side of things, you
yeah,
know.
and that, I don't know what this thought process is that we need to see things live action versions of everything. Like I, it can be fun at times, but it's like, do I really want to see live action Cowboy Bebop, or do I just want to watch regular Cowboy Bebop? Like, why
Yeah,
have that?
yeah.
But I don't know if
Yeah, I
it's
don't
the
know. The
people are
thought.
asking for that, or the companies just think the people are asking for that. So
Yeah, sometimes I feel like, yeah, maybe I'm just outside of the audience of what that is, you know. And there's some things that are popular, and I'm just like, good for them, you
yeah,
know. And then there's other things where they kind of crash and burn, and it seems like anyone could have
yeah,
said, yeah, that's
everybody
not
should have
going to
saw it
work
coming.
out. Yeah, it's strange, but yeah, I what my biggest problem with the whole adapting to live action is it kind of demeans what came before.
I agree.
Sometimes overtly and sometimes subtly, but it sends a message that's like, yeah, the comic or the manga or the anime or the, you know, whatever it might be, like this is the important version.
Well, and you always run the risk of whoever's adapting or remaking or whatever it's like you need to first ask, do you understand what people liked about this in the first place? Because if you don't and you just are doing it, then you're going to miss the point. And it's like if you don't know what people liked about it to begin with, don't even bother remaking it, because unless you really, I guess, have something you want to take the story and you feel like there's something that needs to be said, but I mean, very rarely does that turn out well. So
Can you for me, can you name an instance where you felt an adaptation occurred, whether it was animated or live action? One that did it to you perfectly, and then one that did it to you in such a horrible way. You're like, why did they do that?
When I think of like adaptations that actually turned out really well, I can't. I can't really say there's anything as far as comics that come to mind, but I think of like when I was a kid and the book Holes. Like I've read that book all the time as a kid. They turned that into a movie. It turned out good. I think Fight Club, the movie turned. Actually, I think Fight Club, the movie, was better than the book because I used to be a big Chuck
Hmm.
Palahniuk fan and I read a lot of his books. And I'm actually like, hey, David Fincher adapted this book into something that I think was elevated from it. But on the other end of things, I mean, I could count a million examples of adaptations that have gone horribly wrong. I think I watched, and I don't know if this will make some people mad because I know a lot of people liked it, but I watched like the first episode of the Preacher adaptation that AMC did.
Oh
And
yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
yeah, I couldn't get through the first episode because I was just sitting. This isn't what, like, you're changing too much. It's not for me. I tried watching The Walking Dead. I know a lot of people liked that, which I even the comic I only read the first couple volumes of, so it wasn't that I was a diehard fan of it, but I mean I could tell that the show was trying to do its own thing a little bit, and I just fell off. So anything basically that aired on the CW probably was a bad adaptation in my book for the most part. So I mean, like I said, you can count a million of those.
Well, for me, the pinnacle of adaptation has to be Batman the Animated Series.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I should have thought of that because I did love Batman the Animated Series, which I didn't. Like I said, I didn't read the Batman comics, but I watched the series. I mean, me and my brother watched that all the time. So
Yeah, because they did take some liberties with certain characters or amalgamate certain things and form, their
well, and
own
they,
origin story out of it.
yeah, I
But
mean,
they
like Mr. Freeze,
really,
he didn't even have his like iconic origin story until that show came around. I'm pretty sure is what I
yeah,
read. So
definitely wasn't the same way.
yeah,
And they kind of put together a bunch of the versions of Clayface to create that Clayface origin and that character
but
the way that he was.
was
But yeah,
was Bruce Timm already writing comics whenever they did that show, or was it after
well,
that show came out?
it's so Bruce Timm was responsible for kind of coming up with like the look of it.
Yeah.
Uh, and he had worked previously on Masters of the Universe along
Okay.
with a couple other shows. I think that's kind of why
So, but
he.
he wasn't in the Batman universe.
But no, he wasn't. Yeah, he
Okay.
wasn't making Batman
I was
comics
gonna
or
say
anything
maybe
like
that's
that.
why that show turned out so good, but
But
I
yeah,
guess they just
but then
hit it out of the
between
park somehow.
yeah, some of the writers that were on board, especially like Alan Burnett was on board, and he was doing stuff with like DC, like Super Friends and Superpowers team and stuff like that in the 80s. And then Paul Dini was like really elevating a lot of the stories
Yeah.
for the animated series.
Shoot, I still think like Mask of the Phantasm I think is better than most of the Batman movies that have come out since.
Oh yeah. Oh man.
Like,
When I was a kid, before I grew tired of these things, I was really hoping one day maybe they would do a live action
do like a lot.
adaptation of Mask of the
I
Phantasm. But
I wouldn't be surprised if that still ends up happening at some point. Not and it might not be a good thing, but just for the lack of trying to develop new stories, I could easily see them go into that well and trying to develop that in live action.
yeah, yeah, and I mean, and in some ways, I'm surprised that they haven't because they're so latching on to.
Mhm. Just
Well,
grabbing anything they can at this point.
yeah, and I was gonna say that there's a lot of things that latch on now to trying to create or elevate like the role of a female character or
Mhm.
a non-white straight dude.
Right. Yeah.
But the thing is that there's a big difference between something that's already established, and that's kind of I think what really upsets a lot of people about that sort of stuff is because there are so many characters, there are so many things already that are out there,
Mhm.
and yet
And
they're
instead, you're
kind of
taking these pre-existing characters and just
yeah, and it makes like no
morphing
sense.
them. Yeah. I've often wondered because it's we get so many bastardizations of our favorite movies and favorite characters, and I try to look at it from both sides because I'm like, I know nowadays a movie studio is like, hey, we're not making anything that's not going to make us money, so they're only obviously going to go for properties that people already know. And then I'm like, so my guess is, are they just grabbing a writer who's like, hey, I really want to write, and they're like, hey, you can write, but you got to do it in the Batman universe, and that's it, because we're not going to sell anything else. and then they just are so desperate to tell their story that they have to take these characters and turn them into something they never were.
It's ironic that you say that what's happening with the whole, like, they're looking to mitigate the risk and all this other type. But at the same time, they're like the richest they've ever been.
Oh, I know. That's the thing that's insane about it all is, I mean, it's always crazy to me that everyone's saying comics aren't selling super well while superhero movies are the biggest thing in the world right now. Because it's like, why does that not translate? Like,
oh yeah, well,
I used to see when I saw Spider-Man.
We only have an hour today, Charlie.
Yeah, you're right. It would go for a while, but it sucks because it's so obvious that studios are doing whatever is going to make them a quick buck, and they want to make as sure a bet as they can, so they're going with these easy projects, remakes and whatnot. But the trade-off is you'll never get another The Matrix or something that's so out of left field that it makes, which I mean, I guess it wasn't super successful originally in theaters, but it becomes this iconic movie years later. I thought it was on DVD that it started making all its money.
It was the highest grossing R-rated film.
Okay, well, see, it's like you got to be willing to take those risks. So then you get this new original movie, and now you got, I guess, a new property you can bleed to death if you want. But
they have.
I'm here. We're getting another one, so it's sure, why not?
But yeah, it's interesting when you bring all this stuff up, because they do look for these like legacy properties, or to remake or reboot or whatever, based off of the fact of that acknowledgement that people understand and are familiar with this thing. But then they go in there and they completely change a lot of it.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're trying to play on nostalgia, I don't know who that would be for, because you're gonna isolate the audience that would recognize what that is. Like, let's say if they went in there now and they made like live action, I don't know, Thundercats, right? So, but they make it completely different, and it makes and they could have just came up with Cat Warriors or some other stupid thing. It doesn't make any sense, because it doesn't play on the nostalgia of the people who are familiar with that franchise. And then for people who are new to it, they could care less whether or not this thing existed to begin with. So it's such a weird thing.
It's weird, and the thing I hate the most is when it's like, then take that outrage and use that as the marketing tactic of, people are so mad about this because it's got a woman in it, so now you gotta go see it to get back at them.
And then when it fails, it's like, oh, it failed. It's got a woman in it.
So yeah, I hate that stuff too. And,
so and I think scapegoat all of them.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I really think a lot of that, like, I really don't think there's anybody other than people that are extremely online that like are that invested, but they put this magnifying glass on all these people to make this so much worse. And it makes me not want to see the movie at all, just because I'm like, okay, everything about this.
Yeah. You know what I really miss, and I know this goes off, we're not talking about comics necessarily right now, although we kind of are in an adjacent way. What I really miss is trailers that actually would help you with the story.
Right.
Not like, here's a bunch of images and it's like, darn.
You know what I hate even more?
15 to 20 years now with that trailer.
What I hate even more than that, and this might be a really oddly specific thing, but have you ever watched like a movie trailer that now they do very small trailers before the trailer, where it's like, it's the Spider-Man movie, and then the trailer starts and it's like, why did you do that? You didn't need to do that. I'm here to watch the trailer. Why are you showing me a trailer for the trailer? But that might be a really specific thing. I don't know if everybody's witnessed those.
Is that like an in the theater thing, or is that?
No, this is like if you go to YouTube and you decide you want to watch the trailer for. It happened because I only thought of it just because recently they announced we're getting even further from comics, but they announced this new James Bond game, and I was like, oh, I gotta see if this looks any good. Well, if you watch the trailer for that, before the actual trailer starts, it shows you 5 clips really fast in like a 10-second frame, and then says 007, and then the trailer starts, and I'm like, well, that was all in the trailer. Why did you put that there?
Well, soon what they'll do is they'll have an ad that's in the middle of the trailer.
Oh yeah, just to make sure you're paying attention.
Yeah. Hold on, come back in 10 seconds to see the rest of this trailer.
But I think what you were complaining about with like how the trailers are now, it seems like it was ever since Inception did that trailer with the loud horns that it was like, and that movie did so well that I think everyone was like, people want those horns. We got to play those horns.
Yeah,
Just,
it's weird
whoa.
how everything is like a monkey see, monkey do kind of thing.
One
Whether it's
person does
movies,
it right,
comics,
and then
music, whatever.
Mhm.
But the stuff that always becomes iconic and always really sets a new path is the stuff that goes, I'm gonna zig when they zag.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to movies like The Matrix, it's like you get The Matrix comes out, does super well, and then you get, I'm trying to think of some of those crappy movies that came out around the same, like, I don't know if it was crappy, but Equilibrium and all these other movies that are doing like sci-fi
Yeah,
big
that actually
concepts.
wasn't too bad.
Yeah,
But yeah.
that's why I felt bad bringing that up as an example. But you know, you get a big movie that does something amazing, and then 10 other people want to make a quick buck off of it. So they're like, hey, we got to make something similar that people are craving this thing now. Is
I
how
think
these big studios seem to look at it.
I don't know if I'm misremembering, but I think Equilibrium might have been before The Matrix.
Shoot, I might be wrong then. I just always think of those movies though that come out and then
It's a similar like
somebody,
stylistically
like a
thing. There's like
void
a black trench coat and all that, you know.
Yeah.
Blade is definitely before. Oh, Equilibrium is a couple of years after. Okay.
And I remember, it's funny because they're not all, it's not always even a bad thing, but you can see the, you know, the influence of those movies. I remember one of Roger Ebert's reviews, he reviewed The Lord of the Rings and he claimed that it was definitely a product of a post-Matrix world. And I'm like, Roger, it's The Lord of the Rings. It was written, but it's just funny seeing stuff like that.
That's interesting. I wonder why, what connections he made.
It was the scene. It was one random scene. I think it was whenever they're like running across the bridge, and he was like, "That's like one paragraph in the book," and they made it into this big action scene. But
okay,
and he was like, "But it is a post-Matrix world." I think was his defense for it. He's like, "We can't just do quick scenes." But I feel like he picked the wrong movie to try to make that point with.
I think it's Lord of the Rings is more like it's a post Star Wars world, and I know it was kind of just like the prequels at the time were the thing, but it definitely, I see more of that influence with the Lord of the Rings films than Matrix. That's interesting.
It definitely changed action scenes. It seems like for the better and the worse in some ways for some movies, but I don't know if that was necessarily
well. Yeah, everyone started doing bullet time,
yeah.
and that
Kung Fu out of
Zack
nowhere.
Snyder was born. Probably in a very slow-mo birth sequence.
Oh yeah, that might have been his moment where he realized what his calling was.
Amniotic fluid is flying, and he's like, just all around
just
him.
jotting it down as he's watching, like, oh,
yeah,
shoot, this is it.
Exactly.
But tying it all back into comics, that's what I love about the indie comics realm is that you do get these original ideas and these new things. And yeah, sometimes you'll see somebody that's like, hey, clearly you just read Ninja Turtles and you want to do your own Ninja Turtles. But it's authentic, at least. I never get the impression that anybody's out here, for the most part, just trying to make a quick buck because they think it's easy. I think there's a lot of very talented people in the indie community doing their own thing.
Quick buck in comics is like the most oxymoronic statement there is.
I've lost more money than I could know, but I still love it, and I'm still going to keep doing it.
Now, speaking of oxymoronic statements and things like jumbo shrimp, the pistol shrimp is a real shrimp, but you know that, right?
Oh yeah. That's essentially where the whole idea formed from, was just knowing that there was an animal called pistol shrimp and being like, why is that not already a thing? I was Googling it because I was like, somebody made this, right? Like this is, but as far as I know, I never found anything. But it kind of just, it was one of those ideas where the name birthed everything else. Like I had to form the idea all around the name rather than the name coming at the end, which is actually how a lot of ideas I seem to have are, is you come up with some title and then you build the world around it. Or the characters.
Were you like watching something on TV? Were you looking something up? Like, how did that come about?
I'm not sure if I was watching something, because it wasn't one of those like right away things. It was like just some ancillary knowledge I had. And I remember at the time, and who knows, maybe this connects more than I thought, but at the time I was working behind a gun counter at a store. So maybe in my head, I'm thinking pistol shrimp, looking at all these guns. And I'm like, wait a minute, it's all connecting.
The universe has brought you to this
I'm
moment.
like, maybe somebody brought me a tray of shrimp while I'm looking at the guns. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is it. But but it was one of those things where it was like, well, let me see if I can come up with something just based off this name, if there's anything to be had. So what you're looking at now is the starting point of the series, which is about a shrimp who is in a aquarium of a seafood restaurant that suddenly the him and his wife are living there, and the tank becomes contaminated because a small child sneezes into the tank. So they have to dump it into the ocean, which causes him and his wife to be separated. And now he is on his quest to be reunited. And you can see, yeah, on this last page here in the preview, this is the moment, the turning point of the first issue where his great life goes away because him and his wife have become separated. But it turns into, after this, a Western, under the sea Western action comedy, where he looks more like he does on the cover, very Clint Eastwood inspired. And the whole idea of this book is I wanted to do almost like a Mad Max kind of thing, where it's going from place to place, getting into these crazy encounters. But with this story, while I do want every issue to be its own like full story that you can read, it does tell a larger story of him trying to find his wife, and there is a connected narrative here. So that's essentially the goal of this book. And we
Nice.
just
So the whole
just
series
kickstarted
is like
number
this
3.
episodic sort of thing
It
where you're
is.
telling a
In
complete
fact,
story.
yeah, the very next page of there, you can see it's told in chapters. We got chapter 1. So we're up to the 3rd issue just finished on Kickstarter, and it's at the printers right now. But as you can see on that page, we're offering both of the first issues digitally for free. We're getting number 2 printed right now, so if somebody's interested in a print copy, don't worry, they will be back in stock momentarily. Although we do have the Alexander Jovic cover still in stock, which that was a variant we did for the Kickstarter for number 2. So we do have a couple of those left.
Nice.
Once those are sold out, they're gone forever. We're not printing more of the variants. That was a Kickstarter reward that we had a few left over from the printer.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How are you finding the storytelling going? Is that easier for you to do an episodic sort of thing, or is it harder?
I think for me, it's easier to do. So my last series that I did with Action Lab, The Citizen, every issue was its own self-contained story. To me, that is easier just because it's like the continuity is very loose with that one. So I could come up with anything, and I wouldn't have to worry, well, what came before and what comes after as much. So with Pistol Shrimp, it can be a little more difficult at times, just to be like, I don't want anything to feel like useless filler, because there is a big narrative here to be told. And as you get further into the first 3 issues, like the first issue is kind of the starting point. It's a lot goofier, and it's still a comedy all the way through. But once you get to that second and third issue, you start to see a real narrative forming. And that I find to be more challenging in a good way, because I do love telling a long form story, but it can be a little more difficult than those episodic, like where I didn't have to worry about any kind of continuity or anything as much, other than, hey, make sure the characters end up at the starting point again by the end of this issue.
Yeah. I really like the idea of having it's a longer story arc in terms of like everything connects. There's continuity there,
Mhm.
but it's sprinkled throughout. It's woven throughout every single other episode
Yeah.
or issue. And then having every issue have a complete story, even if the story kind of has an ending that springboards to the next thing.
Yeah, and that's always been that's my whole mantra when it comes to writing comics, is that if you're gonna sell somebody a comic book, a single issue, make sure you're telling a full narrative in the span of these 24 or 32 pages, however long your comic's going to be. Make sure they're getting a complete narrative, even if it's going to end on a cliffhanger or it's going to lead into another issue. There was a few comics I got, I don't want to call anyone out, but some of them were Image comics. I mean, these were professional comics published, where I would read an entire issue and I was like, well, I could have waited for the trade paperback, and
Oh
I
yeah,
would have
that's how
been
a
much
lot of them are
happier.
written
Yeah.
nowadays. Yeah.
And nothing drives me crazier, because I mean, even a really good comic, you're done with in 5 to 10 minutes. It's not a long, hard read, but a good one even if it's a short comic, you still feel satisfied when you reach that ending page that you got something out of it. And why sell individual comics at all if you're not going to make it worth picking up? Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand how some people write comics like that.
It kind of feels like a never-ending sales pitch. That's how
Mm-hmm.
when I'm reading a comic like that, because it's always like, but wait, there's more.
Yeah, 20
the next
pages and
issue.
then just a cliffhanger so that you'll buy the next one. Yeah.
Yeah. And eventually it almost never pans out. I've never read an issue or a story arc that the ending panned out and it was worth them stretching that story out. I've never read one that's like that, but I've read a lot of self-contained issues, even if there's a larger continuity, where you're done reading the issue and you're like, oh, that was pretty good.
Yeah, and those
you
are
want
the
to
ones
pick up the next one because you enjoyed the time you spent with that one.
Yeah, and when I was a kid, because like I said, I never really read a ton of superhero comics, but whenever I did pick one up, I wasn't able to read 1 through 75 of the run of Superman or anything like whatever was running at that point. So it was like I was most likely grabbing issue 34 or whatever just happened to be sitting on the shelf. So if I picked one up and it was like picking up in the middle of a story, I was so let down as a kid. So I wanted something that was, hey, I've got a full story here. Doesn't matter if I don't read the next one or I haven't read the one before, because I'm still happy with what I got here. That was my favorite kind of comic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, most of the comics that I ever got into, it wasn't off of a number one.
Yeah.
It'd be like a 185 or something, but whatever was being presented on the cover looked like an interesting story to me. So that's why I picked it up.
And with Pistol Shrimp, I'm kind of doing more of a narrative, but I've got another series coming out, and it's on the coming soon page of that website, but it's called Gideon in the Real World, and that's what I am doing with that one. And that is going to be a every issue its own thing, to the point where I almost debated, should I even put a number 1 on it? Because I want it to be just, you can grab any issue of this comic when it comes out, and it's an all ages book, where every issue is going to be its own self-contained story, and it's just about this little kid who escaped an insane asylum, and he's running around with this dog that he talks to. So that's going to be out in around August. That one is basically whenever Pistol Shrimp started getting more serious, more of a real story going on, I was like, hey, I still want to write that goofy story. So I made sure I still had something that I could write just for the fun of it's like, when I feel stressed out because I'm writing this really long form narrative, I can write another issue of this one anytime.
Is Pistol Shrimp going to cross over a little bit in Gideon?
I've thought about it because the whole premise of him being kind of a crazy kid. But if it
right there,
it is. But I think if it did cross over, it would be more in the form of somebody reading a Pistol Shrimp comic, more so than him being a living, breathing character in that world. I also always liked the idea of doing like the paradoxal, where he's a comic in his world, but then in Pistol Shrimp, Gideon's also a comic book in that one, and it's like, hey, wait a minute. So
there you go.
But right now, that one, we're still working on that one. The art's all done, but I got to get it lettered, and I'm hoping to have that one out by August. So that one's, if you just want a funny, goofy comic, Getting in the Real World. If you want something that's still funny and goofy, but also telling a serious, semi-serious narrative, Pistol Shrimp's probably more your speed. Pistol Shrimp does have a little bit of, I mean, you can assume gun violence just from the title, but so people always, hey, can I give this book to my kids? In my head, I'm like, hey, I watched RoboCop as a kid, so yeah, go ahead. But maybe some people don't want their kids to read
Should
something
be
like
required viewing for any 4-year-old.
One of my all-time favorite movies, man.
Oh yeah, you got to start them young. Otherwise they're watching Bluey until they're 14, and something's gone horribly wrong.
Gotta give them
and
something.
Not in an ironic way.
Well, hey, like growing up on those movies, there's something about those kids movies where it does have something, which obviously RoboCop, not necessarily a kids movie, but like watching like the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, there's always that scene that kind of a little on the scary side for a kid, but it's like, hey, that's part of the experience. You got to kids want to be a little scared sometimes.
Oh yeah.
I got like a 7-year-old nephew who my sister says he's always obsessed with watching these like jump scare videos on YouTube. I'm like, yeah, that's the kid in him. He wants to be scared sometimes. It's like Halloween.
Yeah, I mean, like you're telling ghost stories around the campfire.
Yeah,
You
scary
know,
stories in the
yeah.
dark. Those books had the scariest art I'd ever seen at that point in my life.
Even the concept of hide and go seek
Mhm.
is like, it's
Hiding
you're
from the
sitting
monster
there
or
and
something.
you're
Yeah.
hiding, and it's a scary thing when they find you.
Yeah.
Like kids
Yeah,
play
it's
all kinds of games and all kinds of stories that they make up to scare themselves and each
oh, yeah.
other.
And it seems like it's gotten dumbed down a little bit where it's like, oh, people seem to think kids can't handle something with a little bit of edginess, not or a little bit of
Yeah.
that factor to it.
Well, that's the weird part, is that if they're not presented with these kinds of things in the realm of fiction, that here's a monster and it can be defeated.
Mhm.
If they're not presented with these kinds of concepts in a simplistic way that helps them to build
Right.
a sense of perspective in reality, then they're going to eventually come across things that they can't really make heads or tails of. Like, I mean,
Right.
I've never talked to anyone, and myself included, I feel this way deeply. I've never talked to anyone who's been into this kind of stuff, whether it's comics or movies or stories in general, and they don't have stories that they think about, characters that they relate
Mhm.
to, and really like, because they give them strength. They give them,
Oh, yeah.
well, this is something that I wanted to aspire to. I wanted to be like a superhero. I wanted to be a hero in general. I wanted to do good. I wanted to help people out. I wanted to be brave when something was scary. And if we don't have a situation where bravery isn't required because nothing is scary, because we don't want to, I don't know, affect the sensibilities of like a 4 to an 8-year-old or something,
Mhm.
then I don't know what the purpose of storytelling is then, other than propaganda at that point.
Right. And I mean, you got to think these kids at those ages specifically, their brains are literally like sponges. I mean, they're everything they see is impacting who they're going to be. So to me, when I'm writing something, as much as I love these new stories that come out that, oh, we've got this very morally complex main character who sometimes does the wrong thing, but it makes him more complicated. And I'm like, that's cool. I like that. I like stories like that. But when I wrote Pistol Shrimp, my whole goal is, hey, this guy's a hero. He does the right thing. It's not always easy for him to do, but he still does the right thing, and it might have its consequences. But at the end of the day, that's what a hero is. And then when I write the morally complicated character, that's usually the villain, because things like cowardice and anger and all that, yeah, it's interesting, but it's not heroic. So make that the antagonist. You can still have your cake and eat it too and do those
Yeah,
things,
you
but
can have side
yeah,
characters that are a little
yeah.
more complicated that way,
And that's, yeah. And I like that idea of like, I compared it to Mad Max, but like something where it's the hero shows up, makes everybody's lives better in some way, or tries to help the people who's struggling with something, and they have a problem. He shows up, solves it, goes on to the next thing, whatever that may be. And that's kind of what my idea was with this one. Like the newest issue of Pistol Shrimp that's about to drop, he meets these two sisters who are needing to take their shipment of seaweed to this town, but they're like, there's bandits all over the road. We can't go because our father went to look for this path, the safe path, and he never came back. And Pistol Shrimp, he's got his own goals he needs to do, but he's like, you know what? Let's go. I'll watch the caravan, and we'll travel, and we'll see if we can make it. So that's kind of the premise of the third issue. And
were you always a fan of Westerns, or are you a fan of Westerns?
I am. I was, so for a long time, my favorite Westerns weren't like conventional, like Back to the Future 3 as a Western when I was a kid. Like that to
Oh,
me
wow.
was
Okay.
like, I love the Back to the Future movies, but as I got older, yeah, the Once Upon a Time in the West and The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. The Searchers is probably one of my favorites, which is a little bit older, but so
I love, I don't know if you've seen them, but the original Lone Ranger series is great.
I've
With Clayton
seen,
Moore.
yeah, I've seen like reruns in passing, but I never watched it. I remember when the movie came out, and my dad was more hyped about it than I was because he was such a diehard Lone Ranger fan.
Yeah,
But
there's the Rifleman,
yeah,
Gunsmoke, Wagon Train. There's so many.
there are.
Yeah, love them.
Actually, this series, it's got a lot of Western. You're also going to see a lot of, because a lot of the villains are more in the style of like mobsters, which is another genre I love, is those mob movies, Goodfellas kind of Godfather stuff. So you're going to see a lot of that influence in the series as well.
Oh,
So,
that's an interesting worlds collide, but yeah,
yeah.
very similar motif in terms of the villains, especially.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's made it for a very fun writing experience, which I won't write something if it's not fun. I can't. Like I try, but I've had many people approach me for, "Hey, will you write something for me?" And I'm just like, "I'd love to, but I'm sorry. If I did it, you wouldn't be happy with it."
Oh
'Cause it,
yeah, I agree.
yeah.
You can feel it. You can read it on the page when the writer, the artist, when they're having fun with it,
Mhm.
and as opposed to when this was just crunched out at the deadline or some
Yeah.
editor wanted it this way,
Which,
you know.
yeah, big advantage of me doing this completely independent is, yeah, I don't really have a deadline. Like I want to get them out as quickly as I can, but my biggest flaw is that I am a slow writer, so it can take me some time. So I'm lucky enough that, hey, I can, as long as I'm getting them out a few months at a time, I'm happy with that. But yeah, I know if I was actually with Marvel or Image or something like that, it probably, the quality might not be as good because I'd be rushing a lot more. But
No comment for me. Because we have to wrap this up. But thank you so much, Charlie, for
No
being on
problem, man.
tonight,
No
man.
problem.
This was a
Thanks
great
for having me.
conversation.
It was.
Yeah, no problem.
And I've always been such a big fan of what you're doing and everything
Oh,
you've done
thank
for the
you, man.
community. So I really happy to be here.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot,
Yeah.
man. Before I part ways with you, anything that you wanted to direct people to, anywhere you want to tell them on where to find you?
Just, you can find me. I'm over on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I'm Charlie McFarland on there. KingBurlipComics.com. If you want to read my books, you can read them digitally for free. So hey, no cost to the consumer. You can check that out. And I'm also seeing in the comments here, congrats on hitting your funding goal, Pete. So
Oh, no
congratulations on
way.
that.
Did we do that? Let me see.
We gotta see. I want to be here when we find out.
I'm gonna. Oh man, we did. Oh man. Look at that.
Nice.
Charlie's
Oh,
my
right
good
on
luck
the dot.
charm
Right
here.
on the dot
Mm,
too.
I gotta invite Charlie back every time. He's my good luck charm.
Well, hey, there's still 14 days, so let's see if we can keep that going. Why
Oh
stop
yeah.
now? Yeah,
Man, wow. Thank you guys so much. We hit the $15,000 goal. I wasn't going to
that's
mention this
awesome.
campaign the rest of the night, but you guys have
No,
made a
you should.
liar
This
out of
is
me
a
in the best
something
way
to be
possible.
celebrate.
Yeah, holy smokes, man. Yeah, so we got 14 days left. We have a couple stretch goals here. The next one being $17,000. I can get a dedicated mini comic printer, which would be the third printer we would have, and that'll only print the mini comic size. And I'll get additional ink and paper for that printer as well, and that'll free up the other two bigger printers to focus on the bigger standard size comics. But thank you guys so much. We got 14 days left. A lot of time here, and 113 backers on board have made this goal possible. You guys, man, thank you guys so much. This is the
Can I
closest to like a dream of a campaign I've ever had, to be honest. So thank you guys.
can I ask you, are you planning on ever doing trade paperbacks again, or do you think you're gonna stick with like the Alterna giant
At
size?
Alterna, we're going to be doing trade paperbacks from now
Yeah,
on.
that's cool. I'm glad to hear
Yeah,
that.
because the giant size, I can't really do them in house
Yeah.
because they're just too big. And honestly, even the commercial printer, like they were always telling me how they kind of struggled with it
Yeah.
because it was pushing the brink of what they could do. So we're
I
going to
liked
be
it, but
getting back to trade
I still
paperbacks.
love trade paperbacks myself. So, but I did like the giant size for the prices. They were great for that.
Yeah, yeah. But we'll continue doing newsprint, 48, maybe 52 pagers, but I think that's where
Nice.
it's going to top out. That's where I feel comfortable with making it still look good. But yeah, that's this campaign incredible. Thank you guys.
I might have to
And
do a special edition pistol shrimp on some
oh,
newsprint
you
one day.
should.
Yeah,
You
be a
should
good
check it out.
Kickstarter goal for future issues coming out.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
because and not to sell you on it necessarily because you're already sold. So but you can always have like a variant type version, or you can have it as a mini comic size. Like some people are really digging the size of the mini comics. They're like
Yeah.
5 by 7.5. I think we're going to do a whole mini comic lineup at
Oh, that'd be
Alterna,
cool.
just reprinting them all in the mini size. But man, I'm floored. Thank you guys so much for your support. And Charlie, this was an awesome conversation, man. I
Hey,
gotta
I'm
have you
glad to
back
be
on
here.
again.
Yeah, absolutely. Congrats one last time.
Thank you, man. Well, everyone, go check out Charlie's books. You can go to what's that site one more time?
www.kingbrillup.comics.com. Like I
Right.
said, free digitals on there if you want to check them out. If you're not sure, and then it's like $5. Like a couple copies left of number 2, Alexander Jovic, famous King Cryptid artist. We got a couple of those left. So.
All right, fantastic. And there it is. It's kingbrillup.comics.com. It's in the description of the show too, so you guys can go check that out. And just a little estimation, when do you think the next Pistol Shrimp campaign is going to launch?
Next one, I'm hoping by maybe fall to winter, it'll be a little closer to that. I'm very adamant about getting everything sent out before I start a new campaign. I know some people are able to do multiple at a time. I'm not one of those people. I'd rather have everything completed on my first campaign before I start trying to sell people on another one. So, but you can expect it around then.
Sounds good. All right, everybody. Thank you once again for being here, for your questions, comments, all that good stuff that you guys always have. Really appreciate your support. And Charlie, thank you again for being generous with your time tonight. And I'm going to cut you loose and get back to doing what you do best. Everyone, hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you so much again. If you support the campaign, thank you guys. Really means a lot. Can't do this without you guys. Literally cannot do this without you guys. So thank you for your support, for your contributions, all that good stuff. And I'll be back again on Thursday night with Adam Lawson, 9:00 Eastern. So we'll see you then. Until then, everyone have a wonderful night and an even better tomorrow. All the best.